Okay, guys, right on to video number 2, and we're going to be covering the call option. And this really pours the foundation for options trading. And if you have friends that trade options, I'm sure you've heard them say, oh, I'm in Tesla calls, I'm in Apple calls, I'm in AMD calls, whatever it may be. And in this video, we're going to cover that strategy. I'm going to break down each individual part, and hopefully you guys will leave with a better understanding. So first, we're going to start off with a more technical definition that, as always, doesn't really help us that much in application. So a call option is a contract you can purchase that allows you to buy 100 shares of stock at the specified strike price at a chosen expiration. Note, you can only do this, meaning buy the stock at that price, if the stock price is above the strike price you chose. So recall the house analogy. You have to pay a premium for the right to buy that house. Similarly, you have to pay a premium to buy 100 shares of stock at a specific price. So keep that analogy in mind as we go through because it really does help. So let's go on to this visual here. First off, the call option is a bullish strategy, meaning that you expect the underlying stock to increase in value. You want to purchase a call option. So we have a call option contract. Now, one option contract is the equivalent of 100 shares of stock. So you could see how this is highly leveraged. A call option contract is much cheaper than owning 100 shares of stock outright, like I covered in the last video. So think about this. Back to the analogy. Think of the stock as the house and the call option contract as the contract that gives you the right to buy the house. So recall in the last video, we talked about how we were profiting just off of the contract to own the house, but never actually owning or buying the house itself. Similarly here, we're profiting off buying and selling the contract that gives you the right to own the stock, but not actually the stock shares themselves. We're never actually taking assignment. Well, in most cases, we're not. So here's an important thing you want to remember here. Very simple. If you expect the stock price to increase, you want to buy a call option. If the stock price does increase, then the value of your call option contract will also increase. Conversely, if the stock price decreases, the value of your call option contract will decrease. So the basics we covered, it's a bullish strategy. We're expecting an increase in the stock price. We're paying a debit to purchase a call contract. Remember, we had to pay the developer for the right to buy that house at a specific time. But remember, we never actually bought the house. We just profited off of selling the right to someone else to buy the house. Same thing applies here. We have unlimited upside. The stock could theoretically multiply in price by 1,000 and we would be making a lot of money. So there's unlimited upside, but your max loss is only equal to the debit that you paid for the contract originally to open the position. So an important note, I keep mentioning this. We're trading the contracts. We're not concerned about getting assigned the shares. So when you guys see this definition, you're probably very confused, or at least I was at first, with the whole idea of being assigned shares, and we're not concerned with this. We're concerned with just the contract. We're profiting off an increase in the price of the contract as a result of the stock price increasing. House analogy, selling the contract, the right to buy. An example I think will make this clear. So let's first go into a helpful analogy I drew up, and this is all you really need to know. So forget all of that technical jargon. This is really what it comes down to. Think of the option contract as just a piece of paper. The piece of paper is just tethered to a stock. As the stock increases, so too does the piece of paper's value. So think of the option contract as something you could buy this piece of paper on the market, and if Apple stock increases, the piece of paper increases in value, and you can just sell the piece of paper for more than you paid. Pretty simple. So ignore the technicalities in terms of applying this in actual practice. You buy the piece of paper, the call contract, and sell for higher if the stock price increases. So what's to come? How do we actually calculate how much the contract's value increases or decreases when the stock price moves? And this starts to introduce the Greeks, which I'm going to make separate videos on explaining in depth, specifically delta and theta. But delta, which is one of the Greeks of an options contract, Say your contract has a delta that's equal to 0.60. Now you can see this on Robinhood or TD or whatever broker you're using. So the delta is equal to 0.6. Then, for every $1 increase in the underlying stock price, your contract increases in value by $60. Remember, 0.60, the option contract multiplier of 100, you take 0.6 times 100, and that's $60. So for every $1 increase in the stock, meaning here that the call option is tethered to, that means your piece of paper is going to increase by $60. So theta and more to come on that, but that's sort of just a brief introductory before we get into the details. So like I said, the max profit is unlimited because the stock price could essentially go to infinity, and let's just say for every $1 increase in the underlying, you make $60. Well, if you only paid $300 for an option contract and it increases in value by $60 for every $1 move in the stock, if the stock multiplied by 1,000, you'd be worth a lot of money. And the max loss is only the debit you paid for the call contract. So say you paid $300 for that piece of paper, the max loss you could take then is the $300 you paid. So let's get into an actual example applied. So this is just a sample example to help you guys kind of work through this. And we'll go over more of these, so don't worry. Scenario: ticker Apple is at a market price, meaning a stock price, currently of $125. Question: when would a call option be relevant here? Answer: if you think Apple stock price is going to increase, as we said. So let's just say it's trading at $125 and you think Apple will be trading at $130, a $5 increase in 1 month, okay? So in 1 month, you think the stock price is going to increase by $5. So you decide to buy the Apple 130 call option contract that costs you $300. And that's just the debit paid for this right. Remember, the house analogy. You had to pay the developer for the right to own that house in the future, but you're never actually owning the house. You're just trading off the contract or the right to buy. So that costs you $300. And that 130 call option, the 130 is actually representative of the strike price, which we'll get to in further videos. So a few mechanics here, just in case you're curious. We'll get into this further, but since the strike price is actually above the current market price, there's no intrinsic value, because if it was exercised, since the strike price is below, or since the strike price is above the market price, it would be worthless if it were exercised. So don't get caught up in the details here. So I drew up a little scenario here with 3 steps. We have the purchase of the contract itself, the corresponding increase in the stock price, and then selling it. So like I said, we bought the Apple 130 call with the June 30 expiration. It costed you $300, which is the premium. So we have here, right now, the piece of paper that you bought, the piece of paper that increases in value when Apple stock price increases, is worth $300. Now, we go on to step 2 here. The stock price soars to $135 in just 1 week. You still have plenty of time till expiration. So a common question I get is, do I have to hold the contract all the way till the expiration I choose? And no, because think about it. It's just a piece of paper that increases in value when the stock price increases. And you could sell that right off to someone else, just like in the house analogy. So now that the stock price has soared to $135, that same contract that you originally purchased is now worth $800. So that piece of paper just gained $500 in value. Now, it also has intrinsic value, but we'll get into that later. Let's get into the 3rd step, selling the actual contract itself. So the contract is now worth, it's actually $500 more than we paid, which I can correct here. Sorry about that. It's actually $500 more than we paid. So we sell it off to someone else. Just like in the house analogy, we sold the contract to buy a house to somebody else for more. We never even touch the shares, and we don't need to wait for expiration. So in just 1 week, we paid $300, now it's worth $800. We sell it at $8, we bought it at $3, we just made $500 profit just selling the piece of paper. Okay, so that basically covers the call option, and we're going to get into a little bit more detail about examples and how this applies, but I think that should cover the basics, and I will see you guys in the next one.